Hey, my name's Cooper Massey, and this is for my Communications 1100 class with Miss Goodman. This is my persuasive speech. I want to introduce my audience. Got my friends Andrew Fowler and Ty Kimball, my grandparents Tim and Belinda Whitfield, and my brother Hunter Massey. So I chose to do my speech over why we should increase the minimum wage. Renowned economist and author Thomas Sowell once said, "Inflation is the most universal tax of all." And doesn't that ring true today just as much as it did back then? Modern Americans are finding that everything that we need to live and stay alive the prices are going up exponentially, and conversely, our pay is not reflecting these raising prices. So today I want to talk about how the minimum wage should be increased in order to give us a fighting chance in this pricey world. So let's begin with looking at how a raised minimum wage is needed when inflation is going up. An article by Josh Bivens of the Economic Policy Institute says that in the last 2 years alone, the minimum wage's purchasing power has dropped by 12.2%, a massive hit to the living standards of working people. And this is completely due to inflation. If you used to make $15 an hour before this spike, you're down to like $13.83-ish because the value goes down as inflation goes up. And according to an article by the OECD, inflation has reached levels not seen in the last 4 decades, hitting disproportionately the poorest households. Despite the recent increases, minimum wages are struggling to keep up with inflation. And this just reiterates this need for a higher minimum wage. Inflation's completely out of control. Prices are sky high, and the wage that people are getting is not near enough to maintain a decent standard of living or to live in general in America, at least. So change is necessary to keep people afloat. Now let's look at how a higher minimum wage will also help to stimulate economic growth. According to the Committee on Education and the Workforce Democrats, raising the minimum wage increases consumer spending and boosts the economy, which would make sense. Essentially what it's saying is that when you raise the minimum wage, you put more money into consumers' hands who then turn around and spend it, which puts that money back into the economy, which allows businesses to grow and which then would allow them to pay their employees more and to keep growing in that way. According to an article by American Progress, the Institute for Policy Studies calculates that for every extra dollar going into the wallet of a low-wage worker, about $1.21 is added to the overall economy. So an increase would help everyone. Businesses would again have more money, which would then create more jobs and higher wages with this increase in the minimum wage. Next, let's look at how a higher minimum wage means a higher standard of living. According to another article by American Progress, a $15 minimum wage can increase their annual wage by an average of $800. An $800 increase in annual wages could help workers cover their expenses, particularly those that are often unexpected. So with the minimum wage increase, it would drastically increase the standard of living and quality of life as well for people. They wouldn't be as pressed on money, because currently with the inflation as well as the low minimum wage, people are pinching pennies, they're paycheck to paycheck, and they can't afford for any emergencies. But this additional money would help cover these unexpected expenses. It could also help them to get more than just needs as they're doing right now. This would allow people to purchase things that they want, like maybe a vacation or TV or even a car that you want. This would allow for a lot more of that freedom. The Economic Policy Institute states in another article that Today, in all areas across the United States, a single adult without children needs at least $17 an hour, roughly $35,000 annually, for a full-time worker to achieve a modest but adequate standard of living. So that's way more than the current minimum wage, and that's not for a plush or luxurious lifestyle. That's just for a regular middle class-ish lifestyle. But that statistic goes to show the absolute need for a higher minimum wage. So now let's take a look at why some people would oppose raising the minimum wage, and why, while the argument can be made, raising it is still the right thing to do. Some people would argue that raising the minimum wage could negatively affect businesses such as small businesses, in that they wouldn't be able to pay their employees this amount, and it would thus end up with layoffs and loss of jobs because of this higher amount that they need to pay. However, I find some flaws with that. Initially, my first rebuttal would be that, like I said earlier, you're putting more money into these consumers' pockets. They're going to spend more money at these businesses, which is going to grow the business, increase their revenue, and allow for them to more easily pay that higher wage. And my other rebuttal would be that a plan to increase the minimum wage wouldn't have to necessarily be just a blanket or one-size-fits-all plan. You could have nuances that take into account these smaller businesses, and caveats for making sure that they stay afloat while people are also getting paid what they're worth. So in conclusion, a federal minimum wage increase would do a lot to help the problems presented by inflation in our country. We both grow our economy and increase our national standard of living for the people who need it most. Benefits of a minimum wage increase are innumerable and would push our country strongly in the right direction. Thank you.